Hello and welcome to episode number 43 of the Crisis Intelligence Podcast. Today is Sunday, March 29th, 2015. I'm Melissa Agnes, and this podcast is brought to you by Agnes Day. Let's talk crisis intelligence. Tad, welcome to the show. Why don't you introduce yourself and tell us about what you do?
Sure. Well, thanks so much for having me, Melissa. I appreciate it greatly. So my name is Tad, and I'm a police officer here in Calgary, Alberta. My position is downtown, so I'm one of those first responders that drives around all day in the police car, essentially, and responds to calls. And then on days off I created a registered charity that is geared towards trying to help make our world a better place, and that I call Bullying Ends Here. And essentially, I go into schools, I speak to young people anywhere from grade 6 to through to adults, basically, and just share stories, real stories about people that have had some challenges and how you can still achieve your dreams if you believe in yourself and give yourself a chance.
You're doing some really, really great work. A colleague of mine came across, I guess he came across your website and he kind of sent it my way. My readers from my blog and my colleagues know that cyberbullying for me, I don't know why, but it's always kind of had a piece of my heart in the sense that I get very frustrated when I read the tragedies that occur throughout North America, around the world, to young people, young adults, teenagers, because of, bullying has been around since the beginning of time, but cyberbullying. Yeah. And then you see things like, what happened to Amanda Todd. I'm sure that you know very well the story, and the sextortion, and just it all kind of plays together, and it's this world of. It is a digital crisis, so fits nicely in. I'm able to use that as an excuse to have people like you on my podcast and say this is a digital crisis. So it definitely falls in with my theme. But not just that, but I have a bunch of government organizations and police agencies and police officers, as well as the educational sector that listen. So I thought that having you on, we can talk about this stuff and just your insights and your experience and your tips and takeaways and stuff would hit so many of my audiences in their own way, in their own, the way that pertains to them. So I thought that would be a really fun and informative, important discussion for us to have.
I agree. I'm glad that you're taking up the fight as well, because we need as many voices and people that are going to truly make a difference as possible. So I'm glad you're on board and helping out in your way.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't know how much of a difference I'll make, but just to give you guys, even just to, bring my platform and give it to you guys to help each other and move forward at least. So how did so you've been traveling from school to school throughout Canada, correct?
That's right.
And this is on your downtime.
It is always on my days off for vacation time. That's right.
And you've been educating young people on the realities of bullying as well as cyberbullying. Yes, so cyberbullying comes into it.
That's right. Yeah.
And so, how did you get into that?
Well, for me, it was late October of 2011. I was, as I do at night, I read the news, and I saw this headline. It says, Ottawa teenager takes his own life because of severe bullying. And I remember, just for whatever reason, I started reading this article, and that is the night that I was introduced to the story of a young man named Jamie Hubley. And, I'd never met Jamie. I was just reading this article, and when I was done is when something happened to me that I'd never have happened before. And that was that I was paralyzed. I was frozen in bed, and what had happened to me is that I had this immediate, reflection back to being a 5-year-old little boy who had this dream that I so badly wanted to grow up to be a police officer, because when I grew up, I wanted to be able to help people. And, reading Jamie's story and the challenges he went through, and in his case being openly gay, and just a whole bunch of things really resonated with me. And that was the night that I decided that I wasn't going to be somebody that's just going to keep, reading the headlines and just hoping the world would become a better place, but that I would do something. And, Melissa, I had no idea what it was going to be, but I knew I was going to do something, and I got in touch with Jamie's family. I tracked down an email address for them, and I essentially just told them all about me. And I asked them, would it be okay if I shared Jamie's story with the world? Anyone that will listen to me, can I tell them about Jamie and how words and actions have very, very serious consequences, sometimes life threatening, and they gave me that that permission. So fast forward, I decided what I was going to do is stand in front of an audience, not knowing it's going to be as large as the audiences that I speak to now, but more just, focus on classrooms, thinking maybe if I just share that this is what I went through in school, this is how I felt, when I was in school, totally feeling alone, and that I was the only one that felt this way. And the importance of recognizing you're not alone and you're not the only one that feels that way, but you have to appreciate that no one can really help you until you're willing to get that help. You have to start the ball rolling by asking and reaching out and letting people know what's happening, and we will be there for you. So that's what I started doing, along with sharing Jamie's story and obviously the tragic results of his story. And I just didn't know that all of this was going to happen, but I'm very grateful that it has.
Wow. And one thing so I watched a few of your videos before I got in touch with you, and just kind of enamored and clicking play after play after play for all the videos that I could find. And
Right.
One thing that I thought was two things, actually. One, you're putting yourself in front of the students, which
Yes.
is amazing, because there's resources out there for parents. There's resources, limited, but still resources out there for schools, limited, but still. But I think that it's really important to, provide the victims and their peers, because not necessarily is it that students or young people are going to confide in their parents. They will probably confide in a best friend. So
Yes.
if you're reaching one of those two people, then you're going ahead of it. And the other thing is that at the end of your message, or maybe it's not at the end, but from what I saw, was you're saying, I'm here. If you need to talk to somebody, you can contact me, and I promise that I will listen. I will do my best to help you. And
That's
that in itself it's a call to action, but it's not a call to action that I've typically seen where it's, here's a number and you can call this number. It's literally, you're standing in front of them, they feel comfortable with you, and you're saying,
Yes.
you can call me.
Absolutely. And I wish you could come with me everywhere I go to explain it that way, because that's exactly what is happening. And it's easy for me to get up in front of an audience and say, okay, well, thanks very much, and I walk away. But, anyone can do that. But this is where that passion comes into play, where, you have to be, for one, brave to share your own story and vulnerabilities and open the door to, some of the weaknesses you've had in your past. But either way, it all still makes you who you are today. But then the second part is the being able to, sit on your couch all night long and respond to emails. And it's not an 8 to 4 job or a 9 to 5 job. It's from the minute I wake up through until the moment I go to bed, there are emails coming through, and nothing really challenging, because as you kind of hit on, it's that connection that a youth has made. Feels as though they made with me during that presentation, that now they just have someone to talk to, and it's back to basics. I mean, it's just going back to communication with, in this case, with young people, but it just seems to be resonating. And as you may have seen, I mean, just last year alone was over 15,000 emails. So I respond to every single one, and I don't cut and paste. It's I type everything out. I think that's the least I can do to respond back to someone that's taken their time to message me in the first place.
Wow. And actually, you responded to me, I think, within 24 hours, which I had seen that 15,000 messages. And I was like, okay, well, maybe he'll respond within a week. That's what I can hope for. And within 24 hours, I had a message from you, which I thought was pretty impressive. One thing that you're saying here about the relatability, you sharing your story, making yourself vulnerable, and communicating and using that to relate to your audience. It's interesting because I work with organizations, with professionals, right? And I consult on crisis management. And one of my biggest messages that I'm trying to communicate, whether it's to the government organizations or to private corporations, is I'm saying that you need to shape your messages as emotionally compelling stories so that you can get through the noise, you can reach the hearts of your audiences, and then you can, reach their minds after that. And so we're talking about bullying and cyberbullying, and that's a digital crisis in its own. And still, it's that same message, that same point of contact is that relatability, and then finding a solution from that point.
That's right. That's right. And one of the things that when I started doing this, Melissa, I remember, it wasn't uncommon for people to say, you know what you should do, Ted, is when you're talking, especially when you start talking about Jamie, put his picture up behind you, and right away, I mean, I don't know what it was because I'm not a professional when it comes to public speaking by any stretch. And I remember just right away, I was very, very, firm on I'm not doing that because like you just said about cutting out the noise, I don't want someone to look at that image and be like, oh, that's Jamie. I want Jamie to be in their mind. I want Jamie created with the story because Jamie could very well be them. It could be their best friend that's just confided in them what's going on. It could be that stranger in the hallway that they see every day that gets the books knocked out of their hand or pushed into the locker or as you've mentioned as well, that, cyberbullying and stuff that they're being targeted online. So Jamie could be absolutely anybody. And when I speak, they don't know that Jamie's no longer with us. I speak as though Jamie is still here, and I take them through Jamie's story of growing up and the challenges, the name calling, the physical, the abuse, the assaults. And then he's not here with us anymore. His parents would discover on October 15th of 2011 that their child had committed suicide because of the relentless bullying for all those years. And I mean, the looks on the kids' faces, it's incredible. So, it's not a complicated presentation. It's just words, but it works.
You say it's not a complicated presentation. It's an important presentation.
Oh, absolutely. Yes.
And I love that. I love that point actually that you just made about not showing the picture. And I'm thinking, just in terms of, we imagine, first of all, you're making Jamie the hero, but you're making the audience the hero. So as well. So you're pulling them in and I don't think I don't think a lot of people would think about it this way, but I think that that's actually brilliant. And just because no matter who's in the audience, whether it's a girl, whether it's a boy, no matter their race, no matter you're not on any presenting any obstacles that kind of makes that segregates them, or you know what I mean? Like to see a white boy, maybe a black girl wouldn't feel that same connection. And that's very natural. That's human behavior. That's human emotion. So that in itself is very powerful.
Yes. Well, thank you. It's and again, this is just going back to, I never planned this. Everything's just kind of just built upon itself. As I was just saying the other day to someone that, like, I've never written anything down. Like, not once have I, kind of put a framework of what I speak about. I never have made a note. I just get up and I speak, and I hope that that's what's resonating with in particular the young people, because they're my focus, that it's from the heart, and that vulnerability and so forth, and that they recognize that everything I'm saying is, although I'm a much older individual, they're almost following through the story. Because again, I start with my own life of being quite young too, of sharing what I went through, and that's that hopes of connecting as well. So, it's I'm still amazed at what's happening. It's unfortunate that it's necessary, but I feel very fortunate that I'm in a position in my life that I'm comfortable doing everything that I'm doing. And if it helps just one person, then you know what? That's all I ever set out to do is help just one person. And it's very clear that I'm helping many more, by just simply continuing to talk about myself and Jamie's stories.
Good for you. So I'm kind of thinking of the people who are listening. So I'm thinking there's probably three categories in my mind. So there's the police officers, the police agencies who are tuning in, and we can put government sector kind of in that if they feel that there's some form of responsibility that they'd like to take in this digital crisis or in this crisis. Then there's the educational institutions, so professors, teachers, whatever that may be, school boards, school districts. And then there's, of course, the human being who's listening, no matter what their profession is, who has children, right?
Yes.
The parents out there listening. So could we, to the most that you're able to, could we kind of zone in perhaps on all three or one at a time and just kind of talk about tangible strategies or takeaways or things that you've learned, whatever it is that could maybe give them something to move forward with?
Absolutely. And it's very simple. It's simple because it's the same thing for all three. and the information that I can provide is coming directly from the source. So it's directly from the youth that are messaging me, because I try not to get involved in statistics and studies and stuff. I
You have
just
your
get my
own
information.
statistics.
That's right. Yeah. And it's very simple what they're looking for. Someone to listen. That's it. And as human beings, especially with adults, we have this instinct that we just want to fix everything, but our fix is based on our experiences. And whether that's being the police officer or being the teacher or being a parent, it's all based on our own experiences growing up. But that's not what the kids are looking for. They're looking for someone to simply listen to what's going on, and having that adult believe in them and empower them with, okay, well, have you thought about this? So basically, we're not telling them what to do on how to fix it. We're kind of just steering them in certain directions of, have you thought about, have you considered, have you spoken to, those types of things of just planting little seeds with them, because the first thing a bully will take away from their victim is that sense of empowerment. They're going to take that away. So they're going to feel powerless, insignificant, those types of things. So we need to build that back up. And it starts with listening. And, even in police work, our client will call us, and before they're even done telling us the whole story, in our mind, we're always trying to figure out, okay, so what are we going to do? How are we going to react to this? What are we, in fact, now we're not listening as clearly as what we should be, and that's what the youth are making very clear to me. They just want to talk. They just want someone to listen.
Wow. And so, okay. So from a school's perspective or a teacher's perspective, opening up a channel so that, for example, one way bringing you in where you are that channel, that's great.
Right. Yeah.
And maybe other ways just to... And then, okay, actually, I have a question that I've been kind of contemplating. So there was a school district in the United States, I think probably about 2 years ago now, if not a year and a half ago, that decided that they were going to engage a company to do some social media monitoring on their students for the sole purpose of trying to listen and trying to find red flags to try to intercept or just be aware of the type of, online bullying and different things that students were going to.
Right.
That is, I think that's, I'd have to follow up. I remember I wrote about it at the time. I'd have to follow up and see how things have progressed with that, which is now I'm putting that on my to-do list to do, spark that thought. But when you look at it that way, you can think of, or a lot of questions come to mind in the sense of what is a school or a school district or a teacher's responsibility? I mean, teachers fight some schools say that you're not allowed to connect with your students on social media, for example,
right.
and others say just don't have a policy. So it's so open-ended. It's so uncharted, such uncharted territory.
Yes.
So being in law enforcement yourself, and then also having this approach and having this dynamic and personal relation with this issue, what is a school's responsibility to some degree? I think that it's very abstract, but still.
Yeah, and I agree with you. I think it is very abstract. I think one of the challenges you have is that a school as a whole, it's an entity that would have to come up with policies in place. It's the same with governments with coming up with laws and stuff. And you're always going to get people saying, we don't need more laws. We don't need this. We don't need that. Well, you know what? At the end of the day, we do need things because there's always going to be someone that's going to push it beyond the simplest of levels of just talking about it. So, okay, you did something wrong. Let's discuss it. Let's rectify it. The vast majority that we'll work with, but there's always going to be someone that's going to push the envelope. So we have to have all the steps in place to go through and say, okay, well, now you've done this, you're going to be held accountable. And if that means it goes all the way through, to the court system, so be it. But we have to have all that. But at the end of the day, when we break it down to what are schools? Well, schools are administrators, teachers, they're human beings. And if a young person is brave enough and strong enough to come forward and say, listen, I need to tell you something, at the end of the day, that is where the responsibility is. Someone is confiding in you as a fellow human being to say, here's how I'm feeling, here's what's going on. And no, you don't necessarily have to be the expert on how to resolve it, but at least be able to listen and then ask that youth, how is it that I can help you? What are you looking for by telling me this? Because now we can start thinking about, okay, let's, are you comfortable? Let's go down to the counselor's office. So now we've got a little bit more of a specialized unit that can help out. Or let's bring the police in if it's something that is going kind of that way, that we need to bring those experts in. So you can see that, it's easy to look at things from the big picture, but at the end of the day, it's still a fellow human being going to another human being saying, I need to tell you something. I need to talk to you. And again, it goes back to, we need to listen.
It really does, eh?
Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking actively, engagingly listening.
Yeah. Yeah. And not tuning out, because, and I know firsthand what it's like when someone comes up and says, you know what, hey, I just got pushed in the hall, or so-and-so's been calling me names, or, I went online last night and there's a fake, Facebook profile or what have you set up. And, it's easy to brush that aside and say, okay, well, you know what, just don't walk down that hallway again, or, just block that Facebook account, or just turn your computer off. But those aren't solutions. That's just simply thinking that you're masking it by saying, okay, well, I dealt with that. Well, no, you didn't. Nothing has been dealt with, because especially when it comes to social media, again, we still have a disconnect between adults and youth for the vast majority of the time anyways, because adults didn't grow up with social media the way our kids are nowadays. So adults don't have the full grasp of the importance of what it's like to be online all the time. Obviously, someone like yourself, Melissa, a little different, but for adults that aren't involved in the internet all the time, they don't understand like the importance of being active on Twitter and Instagram and Kick and Ask FM and Facebook all at the same time, all 24 hours a day. It's like, well, just turn it off. But you can't.
It's their world.
That's right. And when someone sets up something that's negative about you online, the solution is not to take their phone away, or to think that just by shutting it off is going to resolve it, because it's not. Because when they go to school the next day, everyone is going to know what's online. So, we have to work with that young person of, okay, hey, what is this Ask FM program that you refer to, and then as an adult, or as that mentor potential anyways for that youth of, go and learn a little bit about Ask FM. It'll only take a couple of moments of your time, and then you can recognize, oh, okay, so, have you, and then go back to the youth of, have you thought about maybe turning your settings so that anonymous people can't message you, only accounts that have been verified? Or have you thought about, just not responding to this person so that they don't necessarily know that you're even receiving this, and then thereby you're not becoming the victim, or letting them know that you're susceptible to this. Just these little things of just planting the seeds again, empowering that young person to make those decisions.
I'm listening to you talk, and I'm thinking of so many different things, and so many different challenges, because laws are archaic and they don't really help. And there's a question that I want to talk to you after this about police officers, and just, they don't necessarily know where to go or how to get this info. They haven't had this training either, for the most part, because again, the laws are archaic. And, but at the same time, so thinking of schools, districts, principals, teachers, whoever you may be within a school, the school sector, the educational sector, the very first step is, first of all, listening to what you're saying, kind of thinking this through. And it goes back to the best form or the best way to respond in a crisis. And let's take this as, one child coming to you with a problem as a potential crisis, because worst case scenario, that child takes their life. So potential crisis, absolutely. Taking the time to think this through with your colleagues and with the school district or the school board, depending on where you are in the world, as a rule, and provide teachers and the counselors and those that would be approached potentially with at least a line of questions too. So the questions that you're asking right now, a lot of people wouldn't know to ask.
Right.
So provide them with those resources. If you get approached by a child that says, they don't know what to do and they're being bullied on a social platform, number one, are you familiar with the social platform? Do some homework, if the answer is no. Number two, has the child considered these options? Ask them. Don't tell them what to do, but ask them if they've. So, providing guides like this is not the solution, but it's a step towards a solution.
Absolutely. No, absolutely. It's and I think that that is what's most important, is that, chances are that youth is going to come forward and tell you something, and you're going to be like, okay, well, do this. But it goes back to that. That's not what they want to be told. They want to talk about what's going on. But the biggest thing we have to remember is that chances are, and this is again from my experience based on youth messaging me, is that if a youth is coming forward and says something like, hey, Bobby just pushed me in the hall today, chances are that that's not the first time this has happened. This is something that has been boiling up and percolating to the point that now the youth is ready. They're coming forward. They're telling you. So we can't just brush it off as assuming that, okay, well, this is a one-off, just don't walk down that hallway for a while, just stay away from Bobby type of thing. So we need to understand and ask them, how long has this been going on for? Is there something else that's taking place that, that maybe you haven't shared yet? But we have to create that comfortable environment where the youth is ready to open up and start divulging some of that information. So we have to understand that chances are it's not a one-off, and this youth is coming forward. It's something that's been going on for quite a while, and they're at a point that they're ready to blow. We need to sit and listen and ask those investigative questions to find out what more is going on that maybe we're not aware of at this point in time.
And you build the trust by not being, and if you think, I just kind of think back and put myself in my 13-year-old shoes or my 16-year-old self's shoes, and I think if I would have approached somebody, I was fortunate, I wasn't bullied, but if I would have approached somebody for any problem that I was having, I wouldn't have wanted to be told what to do. Teenagers and tweens and young adults, you don't want to be told. You want to be a part of finding the solution. Just, we're wired that way, and it's such an impressionable age. And the other thing that I was thinking is that, and I know that you know this probably from your line of work, but this, whatever the youth is going through, this form of bullying or cyberbullying, whatever it may be, is they're being victimized, they're a victim. And the menacer or the culprit, I don't know how to say that, what the right word would be for a child, but what we know is that when you're a victim, like 99.9% of the time, you're not the first and you're not the last.
That's right.
So that's important too, on the other side of things, to not just think about, just don't go down that hallway anymore. There's probably an underlying greater issue here than probably just this one child, which is a very big issue in itself that needs to be dealt with and dealt with. Makes it sound so impersonal, but no one helped. In terms of law enforcement, I think it's really fascinating that you're a police officer and that you have your foot in both of these worlds, which I think is really interesting. And I've spent some time just chatting briefly with Carol Todd, who is Amanda Todd's mother.
Yes, so I'm quite close with her.
Okay, oh great. I was going to ask you that after our recording, actually. I was going to say, hey, I can maybe put you guys in touch. But okay, so, and one of the biggest problems, or one of the big problems with Amanda Todd's case was Carol went to the police. Carol went to the RCMP. She sought out help. But like I said earlier, police officers, this isn't a part of the training. Digital, sextortion or digital bullying and these types of crimes are not a part of the training for those who are already in the field. We're not there yet. Our society, our laws, we're not there yet. So what are, and I know, so just to kind of give some perspective for those listening, so in Amanda Todd's case, it was sextortion, and Carol Todd went to the police and gave them all the information and kind of asked them, or gave them some insights into what she thought they could do, and basically their response was, they cared. When they first heard about the story, they came to the house to make sure that Amanda was okay. So nothing on the police officers, but they just didn't know what else to do after a certain point. And for those who don't know, Amanda Todd ended up taking her life, as a result of all of what she went through. So what are some strategies, some tips, anything that we can share with police officers, or that maybe if who knows, maybe they got a call yesterday and they're kind of dealing with a similar case and they just don't know what to do because there's not really any resources out there. So what are some tactics that they can take to approach this type of crisis?
Yeah, well, there's two really important things that we need to touch on there that you brought up. You used Amanda Todd's case as an example, but in reality, these are cases that come about all the time. Anything to do with the internet, and more often than not, especially when we watch television or we listen to the radio or read the paper, what have you, is we keep hearing about, okay, so there's this new law that's going to come out. There's this new level of protection that's being created, and of course we get people crying that their rights are being taken away and privacy and all these things. All very important arguments for sure to be had, but at the end of the day, there's the perception that, okay, so if we create this law, then all of a sudden our troubles are done. They're behind us. But what fails to get recognized more often than not is the fact that in Canada, we can create all the laws we want. We can make everything illegal if we want. But when it comes to the internet, it's not Canadian. When somebody is, going back to Amanda Todd's case, is that the culprit wasn't even in Canada. So, we can be providing law enforcement all the information about who the culprit is, all we want. But in reality, unless the country in which the offender is residing has applicable laws or a police service or agency or force that is willing to work with us, is that there isn't anything a police officer or someone in Canada can do, because our hands are going to be tied, because it's not even within our jurisdiction. It's not even in Canada. So, and a lot of these websites, applications, and so forth, they're all based outside of our country. So, you look at Facebook, it's an American. You look at Ask FM, it's out of Latvia. So, and those are two of the ones that, as a police officer and as a person that does bullying against here, that those are the two more often than not that get mentioned by the young people. So, I personally, as a police officer, had a file involving Ask FM that, I had it on the job, and in order to get any type of resolution, to get any type of identification on the alleged culprit, is I had to do what's known as an MLAT. It's a interjurisdictional warrant, basically, that's out of country, but it would take on average 7 months before I would get any results back. And those results could be as simple as, sorry, we're not going to help you. So you can see that there's a whole lot of cooperation that needs to take place in order for us to start being able to correct this. And it's not cooperation within Canada per se, it's cooperation outside of Canada that needs to take place. So it's really, really, really difficult when you have something outside of our country. It's when it's within that now our laws are going to be applicable and will work in the favor of the victim as the investigation goes along.
You're absolutely right, and this is not just a Canadian struggle. It's every country. I mean, if I'm not mistaken, just going back to Amanda Todd, I believe that her what would you call him?
The offender.
Yes, thank you. I'm thinking of all kinds of terrible names, but yes, the offender. He was in Finland or something. So he was in Europe. Yeah. So had Amanda been in the States, she would have been faced with the same issue. Had she been in London, she would have been faced. So it's not just Canadian. I have a lot of Canadian listeners, but I have a lot of global listeners. So just trying to put that out there, that it's not just a Canadian issue. This is the fact that our laws are not universal, for example, and are so archaic. So both of these putting negative towards these situations is a risk and a frustration for everybody dealing with this type of issue around the world.
That's right. So, it's I don't want to use Amanda Todd's case as the example, because I don't know all the intricate details behind the scenes. But, let's just say that a victim came forward to me as a police officer, said, okay, well, here's the offender. I know everything about him. I know his house. I know his address, and it's in another country. Well, you know what? There isn't going to be a lot that I can do. I can put a request through, which would have to go through all the high-ups, going through the Canadian government and law enforcement agencies, and then it gets transferred over to that particular governing country, and then filters down to whatever applicable police service would be for that area. And as you can well imagine, that takes a long time, and that's only if we're going to get cooperation on the other side, because it's not uncommon to not have cooperation.
It's frustrating. So
Mhm.
So painting a very frustrating picture,
Yes.
what is in the power? So what are at least some steps? So that's it's not the end of the line, obviously. It can't be the end
Right.
of the line. But for
Right.
police officers who are being approached with whether it's a teacher that's coming forth or a
Yep.
parent or even a youth themselves, first of all, what are the first steps that they should and could take? And secondly, what are some, so you say once they take those steps, they realize that the culprit is in Europe and, there's not much they can do. What is something that they can do to still help this youth?
Yeah, well, again, it's gonna go back to, we have to, step one, listen. Gather as much information as we possibly can about what has taken place, how the youth is feeling, how long it's been going on, like all those details to kind of paint the picture of what's going on. Then we have to think of, okay, so what means have they been using? That is the challenge here. So is it through, social media? Is it a particular application, or is it like texting, or what is it? So let's continue to go with, it's through the internet, and let's just say it's one particular site that this is happening, Skype, for instance. So then we have to think of, okay, so how can we prevent this from happening? How can we prevent it from continuing to happen, I should say. So, sometimes that's going to mean we need to get Skype involved, and anyone can message them, right? Send a message saying, so here's what's happening. Here's the person's, username or handle that is doing this to me, because you never know what the rules or policies are at Skype that might be able to be beneficial to work in their favor. So maybe they can shut down someone's account. It's maybe they can monitor what's taking place. Maybe they have the means to do their own kind of side investigation as well. But going back to how to help the victim is we need to find a way so that it won't continue. A case like Amanda Todd's is very, very complicated because there's a whole bunch of other things that were taking place in regards to that. But assuming it's just somebody that is saying, listen, this is what's happening through this program. I'm getting all these messages. I don't know what to do. I'm feeling really down. Well, so now we've got the picture, right? We know what's taking place. We got to start working on the victim. Priority number one is getting them healthy again, finding ways to do it, asking them what they're looking for as far as help. That's the sense of empowerment. And then as a policing service, now we need to work on, okay, so how can we prevent this from happening? Sometimes it is going to be a matter of reporting someone through the means that's being used. Again, sticking with Skype, we would report that user, and then we would go about either blocking or finding a way to prevent any messages coming back through to the victim themselves.
Okay. Unfortunately, we're at the beginning stages of, on no matter what angle we're looking at this from, no matter what angle we're looking at this from, we're really we're in our infancy to dealing with this growing issue.
Yes.
Which is frustrating. Yeah. But at least there's people like you who are out there who are actively just trying to push forward. And I do believe that, we will. We will get somewhere, and laws will catch up, and the right people in the right places will take initiatives like you're doing, exactly like you're doing, and continue to do.
And I think people need to be very very open-minded when it comes to laws, because it's very simple for some people to say, well, we already have those laws in place. Well, if you don't know that much about the law, let's let the experts that deal with the law, figure out, do we actually have those in place? Because, it's one of the challenges we have is that, the criminal code, when it was basically, until recently, we didn't have things like, cell phones that are basically miniature computers that have everything on it, all the data and so forth. So now, the Supreme Court of Canada is starting to get all these cases that are going through about, so what are the powers, what are the rights, what are the abilities that we can do to try to track down these potential or alleged offenders. And it's easy to be the armchair quarterback and sit in comfort of your home and say, well, that needs to be done and that needs to happen and we can't be doing this. But you know what? We have experts in all of these fields that are there for a reason. And whether it be lawyers or judges or police officers or however, but they all need to come together, which I know they are. And that's how we're getting these new laws in place. But you can make all the proposals to the government you want. At the same time, it's up to them that have to create the laws and put them on the record for a police officer to do it. And again, it goes right back to everything takes so much time, and our kids, it's today that they're struggling. So, let's let the experts with the laws deal with that. Let's let the experts, in the schools deal with that. But if someone has an idea of something that's out there to go and help our kids and to help make our world a better place, get out there and do it. And if you don't have the means to go out and physically do it yourself, then look at those organizations and the charities and the groups that are doing these terrific things. And if you believe in them, then financially support them. Let them continue to be able to reach even more and give them a hand, because it's easy to sit and be the armchair quarterback. It's another thing to stand behind your thoughts and beliefs and your words and actually, to make that change.
Beautifully said. And if this is something, what we're talking about now, Tad and I, if you're listening and you're feeling like some form of inspiration or calling, or what you're saying, Tad, is that there is something for everybody to do. There really is something for everybody to do.
Yeah. And Melissa, I can even say with what I do, anyone can do what I do as far as the program that I created. It's every person has a story. Everybody has something in their lives that they're passionate about. There's no schooling that I went through to do this. It's if I had asked permission to create Bullying Ends Here before I did, of course, people would have said, no, that's not going to work. You can't just go stand in front of a group of people and just, blab on about your own life. Well, you know what? I didn't ask. I just did it. And clearly it's working. I mean, look at you and I. We're having a conversation today. I must be doing something right because our paths have crossed. So you can see how it's very easy to have the naysayers out there and say, well, that's not going to work. We need to do this. Well, the reality is everyone learns in a different way. Everyone is receptive to different individuals that are trying to instill knowledge and growth for them. But in reality, we need everybody. And we need all the different approaches, because I know mine isn't going to solve the world. But if it, as I said earlier, if it solves just one person's world, then it was all the worthwhile. Maybe another youth or adult is going to learn better by seeing that shock value video, and I'm not going to be able to reach that person because that's not how they learn. So we need every possible approach available, and then we're going to reach the majority of those that truly need the help.
Well said. It's so true. It goes back to, I'm just kind of thinking of everything you're saying. And I just recently wrote a post. So I'm always, like I said earlier, I'm always talking about shaping your messages as emotionally compelling, relatable stories to reach your audience. And then to find different ways to say the same message. We need to do that. Brands need to do that from their marketing to their crisis prep, whatever it may be. But you're exactly right. You can have an auditorium filled with young people, and you can stand there and do your thing and reach, say 50% of them, and somebody else can come in with something totally different with the same message, but totally different way of presenting it. And they can potentially reach the other 50%.
That's right.
You're absolutely right that we're all touched in different ways.
That's right. Yeah. We have the different connections, and we need to back that up as well. Because like I said, it would be very easy for me to go into a school and rile everyone up and walk away. But then what happens? Because the schools, they don't always have the resources available to deal with the overwhelming amount of young people that are going to come forward and say, I need to talk, I need the help. Well, that's why, my program isn't just a fly-by-night 1 hour in the school and I walk away. That's just the introduction, because it's there, like you and I touched on earlier, is that's now they get to know me. They get to understand where I came from. They get to see that we have things in common, even though we're different ages. We still have something in common, and one of those things is trust. And that's where that long-term support comes in with emailing. And emailing may not seem like a big deal to some people, but to a young person, to have someone that's going to respond back to them in what they know is going to be a positive way, and not maybe what they're used to online with a whole bunch of negativity, well, that might mean the world to them. And if it gets them through just one more day, you never know what tomorrow may bring. And tomorrow may be the day that changes everything for the better permanently.
Wow. And so for schools listening, do you do this only in Canada, or have you gone international yet?
Yeah, so I have requests from from all over the world, as far away as I think the farthest is New Zealand. I don't even know how people hear about me, quite honestly. Obviously, mediums like yours certainly help. But as of right now, it's only been within Canada. It's, the biggest challenge we have is being a charity, is that, it's the funding. Right, we need the money that will help pay to reach these young people. With Bowling Ends here, no one makes anything. Like, no one makes $1. There's not a single salaried person. I don't ever want a penny for what I do. I do it because it's the right thing to do. But the thing is with success comes expense, and to reach these individuals, you have to get there some way, and that really does add up. And that's what our challenge is right now. Is, I'm willing to pay by far the vast majority, but I need others that believe in me just as much as I do, and our young people to step up to the plate financially in order to reach out. And I've been fortunate. I have Dominion Lending Centers have been great with assistance, but we need even more. Because nothing's going to stop me. I'm going to keep reaching as many as I can, and it's money that slows us down.
So if there's people listening right now who think, I want to help, and the way that I can help is I can donate. How can they do that?
If they go to bullyingendshere.ca, there's a donate page right on there, and that, like I said, every penny of every dollar goes directly to reaching and helping those youth. Every penny. We
can't have you going bankrupt, because then you wouldn't be able to reach anybody. Because travel is expensive. I'm a speaker.
It is.
And travel is expensive. It adds up. So
it does. It really does. Yes.
Tad, thank you so much for taking the time. Is there anything that we didn't touch on, or that we didn't say, that you want to, any last words of wisdom or insight?
Yeah, I think one of the most important things that I'd just like to touch on is just that if there is someone out there, especially a young person that is growing up, and they believe that everything is just negative in their life right now, they're really struggling with things. The fact of the matter is everyone has dreams, and I had a dream as a little boy growing up. As I shared, I wanted to be the police officer that I am now. But the thing is sometimes we can't see far into the future. We can't believe that we're ever going to be worthy of achieving those dreams. And what I want to get through is that, if you believe in yourself and you give yourself a chance and you truly, truly try, then anything is possible. But none of that will be possible unless you do those three things. You have to believe, you have to give yourself a chance, and you have to at least try. And if you do those three things, absolutely anything is going to be possible, and you can't let other people slow you down.
Thank you so much for that.
Oh, anytime. My pleasure. Thank you for having me on.
Oh, thank you for accepting. And where can people, so you said bullyingendshere.ca, where else can people find and follow all the stuff that you do?
Yeah, so I have Twitter, which is at Tad Milmine. If they simply Googled my name, there's going to be a lot of connections on there as well. So Tad being TAD and Milmine MILMINE, and it'll all link back to either getting in touch with me or anyone else with the Bullying Ends Here team if that's what they're looking to do, and hopefully I can get out there and reach even more youth and truly try making a difference out there to making our world a better place.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Tad, thank you so much for taking the time to share your story with us.
Anytime. I'm always here, Melissa. Always here.
Likewise. Thank you for tuning in and listening to this week's episode of the Crisis Intelligence Podcast with me, Melissa Agnes. I release a new episode every Sunday, so if you haven't done so already, be sure to subscribe to this Crisis Intelligence Podcast on iTunes or Stitcher so you don't miss out on any future episodes. While you're at it, feel free to leave me a rating or review on iTunes. This will go such a long way in helping me get this important information to more people just like you to help benefit their crisis management and crisis communications. Additionally, if you'd like to have me come and speak at an upcoming event that you may be organizing, I'd be happy to have a conversation with you. You can email me at melissa@melissaagnes.com. Thanks so much for tuning in this week, and I look forward to talking even more crisis intelligence with you next Sunday.